Good morning. I'm Crystal Roy with the Safari Group, and I want to talk to you today about a few fees that you pay up front in a real estate transaction, even if you're getting a VA loan, which is 100% with no money down, and even if you have a USDA loan, which is also 100% financing with no money down. So if you're going to even pay cash, you're going to pay that closer to closing. There are a few fees that you will have to pay up front as you work toward closing if you're going to get a loan. One of those is the Earnest Money Deposit. So I'm licensed to practice real estate in North Carolina and South Carolina. Earnest Money Deposit is having skin in the game. It's where you take an amount of money that's negotiated between you and the seller, and that's placed into a trust account or escrow account at the attorney's office on your behalf that you will use to pay part of whatever your down payment or your closing costs are at closing. We typically see $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 on the upper prices of homes. It's going to be 1% of the sales price. So that check or wire funds is sent to the attorney's office in North Carolina within 3 days of being under contract, and in South Carolina within 24 hours. So that's one of the big pieces of money that goes into the transaction on your behalf. Now, people ask me, what happens if I decide to back out of the contract? Well, as long as you do that, you can terminate for any or no reason during your due diligence period. So if you decide that for whatever reason that you're not going to proceed with your purchase, then the buyers and the sellers, you as the buyer and the seller, must agree for that earnest money deposit to be returned to you, the buyer, right? So we still have to have some signatures to sign that back to you, but the contract does state that as long as you are performing according to the contract and that you terminate on time, that you'll get your earnest money deposit refunded back to you. Excuse me. Another fee that's paid at the same time is the due diligence fee. Now, North Carolina and South Carolina are a bit different, but in both cases, the due diligence fee is a non-refundable fee, kind of like a reservation fee if you're having to pay one at a hotel that's non-refundable, where in North Carolina, it's paid at the time of contract, so within 3 days. And in South Carolina, is only paid if you terminate, but is negotiated up front. So I've seen $20,000 here in the due diligence fee because the person was like, I am not backing out on this house. I'm going to go ahead and pay this up front. The seller has a huge measure of faith that I'm going to close, and my offer is very strategic against other offers that may only be offering $1,000 or $2,000, right? So that is a check that's written directly to the seller that the seller's bank has to process and then prove to the lender a couple of days before closing that that check has been received and has been cashed in the seller's account. That will also show up on closing and be, of course, credited back to you like the earnest money deposit during closing. However, there are a couple of differences here. So due diligence fee is basically a fee that you pay the seller in exchange for taking their house off the market for no other people to go under contract while you do your inspections, right? So when I'm representing the buyer, I want the inspection date to be further out. When I'm representing the seller, of course, I want that to be fewer days. Less risk for the seller. So during that due diligence period, you're going to have your home inspection and your termite inspection and your radon inspection, which is highly urged. So you're going to pay that provider of your home inspection up front. So you're going to pay that before closing in most cases. I would say 99% of cases, because you're paying a service person to perform a service. Whether or not you buy the house, that service provider has provided a service to you and it should be paid. So they typically won't release the report for the home inspection until you've made your payment, unless other arrangements have been made. But those inspection fees are going to be paid up front. So it could be, depending upon what the size of the house is, could be $550 to $750. So $550 to $750, depending upon the size of the house and the scope of your inspections. Now, a survey is something that also is a service to be provided that is going to be paid to the service provider at the time of service. So that's going to be paid up front. Now, when we do negotiate for a seller to pay any of your closing costs, these can be part of that. So it can be reimbursed at closing, depending upon what the lender allows. And then appraisals. Your appraisal can also run, depending upon the market, depending upon a few factors, the size of the house, etc. That is going to run between $550 to $1,000, depending upon the house. That is a service provided to you from a service provider, which has to be paid up front. So in total, we're talking about a possibility of earnest money deposit, let's say $1,000. Due diligence fee could be $1,000 to more, right? So it's $2,000. Inspections could be $550 to $750, so we're talking about, close to $3,000. Survey, depending upon specific circumstances, could be $1,000. So now we're talking about, about $4,000, and then the appraisal again. So we're talking about $5,000 possibly up front. Not to scare you, right? But these are things that you're going to pay well before closing that you need to be aware of. These can be put on credit cards unless your debt to income ratio is close. Now, if you have any type of cash income, like you're a waitress and you get cash tips, I'd recommend that you perhaps pay these in cash instead of putting anything on a credit card, especially if your numbers are running close with your debt to income ratio, or just, write a check from your bank. Hope that was helpful. Hope that didn't scare you, but there is a way to have these items reimbursed by negotiating for the seller to pay your closing costs in a market where sellers are doing that. Right now, we are seeing less and less of that unless the house has been on the market for a while. But just wanted to share some real estate terms, some contract terms with you and how they work related to money in the transaction and what you'll have to pay up front. So will you need a bit of money up front? Absolutely. And again, you could use a credit card and then pay those back at closing when you get seller pay closing costs. So we'll have to strategize to structure which way that works best for you. So again, I'm Crystal Roy with the Safari Group. I'd love to help you with your next transaction, your next deal. I have a great deal coming up soon in the university area. I have the honor of working with the third generation in a family. I can't wait. You guys have a great day. Bye-bye.